It started with one message. A single line that changed everything. "Don't tell Rasheeda about the switch, please." The text, sent from Kirk Frost's private number, appeared late one night on Jasmine's phone, short, frantic, and followed by 3 missed calls. And when that screenshot leaked, Atlanta stopped breathing. Fans across social media froze in disbelief, scrolling, zooming in, trying to decide if it was real. Could Kirk really be hiding another secret, even deeper than the affair? The internet lit up in seconds. Comments poured in under every post. What DNA switch is he talking about? Is he saying the test was fake? Rasheeda's gonna lose it. The whispers turned into threads, and those threads turned into full-blown theories. People started digging up old interviews, trying to connect dates and faces. And somewhere in between all the speculation, Jasmine disappeared offline. No stories, no posts, nothing but silence, and that silence only made the story louder. Sources close to the Frost family say Kirk had been unusually quiet for days before the leak. He'd stopped showing up at Frost Bistro, ignored texts from friends, and was seen pacing outside his studio, talking on speakerphone. He looked stressed. "Man," one witness said, "like he was trying to fix something before it got out of control." But it was already too late. The screenshot was circulating everywhere, and Jasmine's name was trending again. Behind the scenes, Rasheeda was said to be blindsided. She was filming when a producer showed her the post. Her reaction was caught on camera, eyes wide, lips trembling, phone shaking in her hand. "Nah," she whispered. "Nah, that can't be real." Crew members said she walked off set, refusing to continue. The tension on set was so thick that filming had to stop for the day. People who were there said the energy shifted completely. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was betrayal resurfaced, raw and public. By the next morning, Kirk's team tried to call it fake news. But the timestamps, message bubbles, and contact photo made denial almost impossible. Insiders claimed Jasmine had been holding that message for months, debating whether to expose it. The story goes that she finally decided after a private argument with Kirk turned ugly. And now, fans want to know, what exactly was switched? Was it the DNA test from years ago that confirmed Kirk as the father? Or something more recent? Something no one was supposed to find out? As Atlanta's gossip mills spun faster, one thing became clear: this wasn't just another scandal. This was a turning point. Because if Kirk was begging Jasmine to keep quiet, it meant one truth. Something big was buried under that DNA test, and he was terrified it would come out. And from the looks of that leaked message, it already had. Kirk sat alone in his car, engine off, rain beating against the windshield like it had a rhythm of its own. His phone was still in his hand, screen dimmed, showing the last message he sent to Jasmine. "Please delete it." 3 words, no reply. He'd sent it hours ago, but she hadn't opened it. His chest felt tight. This wasn't just another rumor, another headline to ride out. This was different. This time, there was proof. And if that proof reached Rasheeda, everything he'd rebuilt would burn overnight. Back at the house, Rasheeda was pacing, scrolling through her phone while the TV played muted in the background. The notification tone that had haunted her for years. A screenshot sound echoed again. She didn't want to look, but curiosity was stronger than fear. The group chat was already exploding. Kay, Michelle, Erica, and Carly Red had all seen it. "Girl, what is this?" Kay Michelle texted. He begging her not to tell about some switch. Rasheeda's throat tightened. Her hand trembled as she typed back, "I don't know. I really don't." But deep down, she did. She remembered the day Kirk came home from that DNA appointment. His eyes had been swollen, his voice shaky. He'd told her it was all over, that the baby was his, that the drama could finally rest. But something in his tone had never sat right. Meanwhile, Jasmine was sitting in a dimly lit apartment across town, phone buzzing nonstop. Her best friend Keisha was begging her to turn it off. "Girl, you done started a war," Keisha said. Jasmine shook her head, exhaling hard. "I didn't leak it. I just sent it to one person. I didn't think it would spread like that." Keisha rolled her eyes. "You sent it to one person. That's all it takes in Atlanta." Jasmine leaned back on the couch, guilt mixing with anger. "He lied to me, Keisha. He made me believe that test was switched for my own good, like I was protecting him. But now he acting like I'm the one who ruined his life." She wiped a tear from her cheek, whispering under her breath, "Nah, he ruined his own." The next morning, TMZ-style bloggers and ATL gossip pages were on fire. Exclusive, Kirk Frost DNA cover-up. Headlines screamed. Podcasts were dropping emergency episodes. Instagram lives popped up every hour. Everyone with an opinion. Even fans outside the LA Tal circle were tuning in. One viral comment read, "The Frost saga never ends. It's like a movie with no credits." But behind the screens, a real storm was brewing. Kirk knew Jasmine wasn't bluffing anymore. She had more than that one message. She had receipts, voice notes, screenshots, photos from the clinic, and if those ever saw daylight, his entire marriage would collapse. He drove to her apartment that afternoon, hoodie up, glasses on. The city was buzzing, but he didn't care. He knocked once, twice. Jasmine opened the door halfway, crossed her arms. "You got a lot of nerve showing up here," she said flatly. Kirk's voice cracked. "Please, Jasmine, can we just talk?" She didn't move. "Talk about what? The truth you've been hiding or the lies you've been feeding?" Kirk sighed, stepping inside before she could stop him. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought you could control me," she cut in, her tone sharp. "You thought you could keep me quiet forever, huh? I kept your secret for years, Kirk. Years. And now you mad 'cause the truth slipped." He rubbed his face, pacing. "You don't understand what's at stake." Jasmine laughed bitterly. "I understand perfectly. Your perfect image, your business, your family brand, yeah. I know what's at stake. But what about me? You ever think about what it did to me?" Kirk's eyes softened. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you did," she said quietly. "Every time you looked me in the eye and said it was for the best, you hurt me again." The room fell silent for a moment. Then Kirk whispered, "Rasheeda can't find out like this." Jasmine looked him dead in the eye. "Then maybe you should have told her yourself." At that same moment, Rasheeda was on the phone with Yandi. "I can't keep doing this, Yan. Every time I think it's done, something else comes up." Yandi tried to calm her. "Breathe, sis. You don't even know if it's real." "Oh, it's real," Rasheeda said softly. "That's his number. That's his tone. I know my husband's panic when I see it." Yandi sighed. "Then what you gonna do?" There was a long pause before Rasheeda answered. "I don't know. But I'm not about to let him embarrass me again." That night, Kirk returned home, trying to act normal. The kids were asleep, the house quiet. He walked in, dropped his keys, and froze. Rasheeda was sitting at the kitchen table, the phone in front of her, screen glowing with that same message. She didn't say a word. The only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Kirk swallowed hard. "You saw it?" Rasheeda didn't look up. "I saw everything." His voice was barely a whisper. "It's not what it looks like." She laughed softly, bitterly. "That's your line every time, isn't it?" He sat down across from her, eyes pleading. "Rasheeda, please, just listen." She finally looked up, tears in her eyes but her face stone cold. "I listened before. I believed before, but you kept lying. And now I find out there's something about a DNA switch." "What is that, Kirk? What did you do?" Kirk hesitated, the truth trapped behind years of shame. "I had to protect us." Rasheeda slammed her hand on the table. "Protect us from what?" "The truth." His voice cracked. "From losing everything." She stood, shaking her head. "You already did." She walked away, leaving him sitting there in silence, guilt heavier than the air in the room. Outside, thunder rolled through Atlanta again, as if the sky itself was judging him. The leak had started a fire, and Kirk knew no amount of denial could put it out now. What he didn't know was that Jasmine wasn't done yet, because the next message she held in her phone wasn't just a text. It was a recording. And that recording, if released, would destroy the Frost family for good. Keisha pressed play and the room filled with a shaky breath. Then Kirk's voice, low and urgent. "I told you what happened at the clinic. They mixed the files. I fixed it. Please don't tell her about the switch. Please." Jasmine's face tightened as she paused the clip. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. "Hear that?" she asked. He admitted a fix. Keisha leaned forward, eyes wide. "Girl, this is the kind of receipt that breaks the internet in half." Jasmine shook her head. "I don't want to break the internet. I want this to stop chewing me up." But her phone was already vibrating with new messages. New offers, new demands from producers, bloggers, and a number saved only as private. Atlanta had caught the scent, and it wasn't letting go. Kirk sat in his studio staring at an empty session file, headphones around his neck like a noose. He could still hear his own voice in that recording, every syllable a confession. He had called Jasmine from a parking lot outside the clinic months ago, terrified she was about to go public, out of rage, promising he would make it right if she stayed quiet. When she didn't answer, he had spiraled, leaving voice notes instead of texts. The app had stamped every second. Time kept its own receipts. He opened a group chat with his manager and a crisis PR consultant. "We need to frame this," the consultant wrote. "Deny, destabilize, deflect." Kirk typed, deleted, typed again, then just tossed the phone aside. Deflection had kept him alive, but it had also kept him stuck. Rasheeda spent the morning at Frost Bistro pretending to check inventory, while she replayed 10 years of her marriage in her mind. In the corner, staff whispered behind prep tables, phones face down and still dinging. A producer from the show slid into a booth with a notebook and a glass of iced tea. She hated seeing them in her space when real life was cracking open. The producer lifted a hand gently. "You okay to talk?" Rasheeda said nothing, then sat across from her. "Be straight with me," she said. "Do y'all know more than I do?" The producer exhaled. "We know there's a recording. We don't know if it'll drop. We know Jasmine is talking to people." Rasheeda's jaw flexed. "She always talking to people, so can we film later?" The producer asked, soft but relentless. "This is your story." A bitter laugh flickered out of Rasheeda. "No, this is my life. You want me to perform my life while it falls apart?" The producer's eyes didn't move. "We can pause, but if you want your voice in it, the cameras have to be there." She slid a card across the table. "We'll move at your pace." By afternoon, ATEL gossip pages were running side-by-sides of clinic logos and timestamp theories. Fans were shocked. Emotions ran high in the comments. The family was left divided in the court of public opinion, with some defending Kirk as a man trying to hold his home together and others calling him a manipulator who rewrote reality for ratings. Carly Red hopped on live with a smirk, murmuring, "Baby, when I tell you, Atlanta is hot right now," and her chat exploded. K. Michelle retweeted a thread about medical ethics with a pointed emoji. Yandy texted Rasheeda again. "I'm pulling up." "Don't," Rasheeda replied. "If you see me right now, I'll break." Then she tossed her phone in her purse and left the bistro through the back. Jasmine's door rattled and Keisha jumped. "Who is it?" Jasmine called. "Delivery." A male voice answered. They exchanged a glance. Jasmine opened the door on the chain, and a man in a dark cap held up a letter-sized envelope with no label. "From a friend," he said, and was gone before they could ask a question. Keisha locked the door, heart pounding. "Girl, if we get a bomb, it's not a bomb," Jasmine said, even though her hands were trembling. Inside the envelope, a photocopy of a clinic intake sheet with Kirk's name scrawled in blue ink, a post-it with a date, and a business card with a single handwritten word, "Ask." There was a number. Jasmine tapped it into her phone but didn't hit call. "This is a setup," Keisha warned. "Or it's the truth," Jasmine whispered, the word catching in her throat like a fishbone. Kirk's mother called him and he let it go to voicemail, then listened with his head in his hands. "Baby, I can hear the trouble in your silence. I don't know what you did or didn't do, but you better stand up in it. Don't make that girl carry your sin, and don't make your wife carry your pride." He felt 12 years old again. Caught with a fistful of candy he swore he hadn't stolen. Part of him wanted to drive to his mother's house and confess everything. Another part of him was busy strategizing how to keep everyone in separate rooms so they never compared notes. That night, ATL's biggest blog posted a teaser, "Midnight Drop," the clip that might end the Frost brand. A countdown clock spun. Commenters camped like it was a sneaker release. Jasmine chewed her lip and rehearsed the word "no," like an actor learning a line. Then the private number buzzed again. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. A calm male voice. "I represent the clinic." "The clinic?" she repeated. "I need to discuss a confidentiality matter," he said. "The intake clerk you spoke to is under review. There are legal implications to sharing certain materials." Keisha mouthed hang up. Jasmine said, "Oh, now you care about confidentiality, after y'all fixed something you weren't supposed to fix." The voice paused. "Miss Washington, without confirming or denying anything, I can say that paternity cases are sensitive. Some parties make requests that staff should not honor. We are looking into it." "Some parties," Jasmine repeated, tasting the vagueness. "Did Kirk pay you?" Another pause. "We should meet," the voice said. "Public place. Daylight." Jasmine stared at the envelope, then at Keisha. "Text me the location," she said, and ended the call. Rasheeda drove without a destination, the kind of driving that was about motion rather than arrival. She ended up in a parking lot under a bridge, where the city sounded like wind and rails. 2 cameras had followed at a distance until she waved them away with a look that meant don't. She put her head on the steering wheel and asked a question she hadn't allowed past her teeth. If the test was touched, what did that make the last few years of forgiveness? What did that make her? A fool? A fighter? Both. She was tired of being a mirror for other people's mistakes. She dialed a number from the family group chat. "I need the pediatrician's office to resend any paperwork," she said when a relative picked up. "Everything. I want to cross-check dates." The relative hesitated. "You sure you want to open this?" "I'm already inside," she answered. Midnight hit and the blog dropped the clip like a grenade. The audio was muffled in the beginning. The clatter of a car door, then Kirk's voice, unmistakable. "I fixed it. I couldn't let that be the story." I had to protect my house. Don't tell Rasheeda about the switch, please. The internet detonated. Fans were shocked. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided on whether to defend him or demand he leave. Within minutes, a second clip surfaced, someone else's phone recording of the same call from Jasmine's end. With her voice audible, "Protect your house by burning mine," she snapped in the recording. "How is that the math? Kirk," he mumbled, "I'll make it right." "You're always making it right later," she said. "Later, don't fix now." Comment sections became tribunals. Strangers wrote essays about loyalty and deceit. Even people who swore they didn't watch the show had opinions. The story outgrew the cast. It belonged to the city now. A producer texted Kirk a single line, "You need to speak on camera." Kirk typed back, "Give me 24 hours. He needed to gather whatever remained of his narrative and wrap it in apologetic language that still left him an exit. Rehearsing, he caught his reflection in the dark studio glass and didn't recognize the man practicing grief like a chorus. He threw a notebook against the wall, paper zigzagging down like slow snow. He wanted to call Rasheeda, to sit on the couch and tell her everything in one breath. He wanted to call Jasmine and beg. Instead, he called the crisis PR again. "We go with partial admission," the consultant said. "Acknowledge inappropriate influence without confirming a switch. Position it as bureaucratic confusion. Lean on your role as a father trying to reduce harm." Kirk closed his eyes. "That's a lie inside a lie. It's a narrative," the consultant corrected. "Right now, the narrative is writing you." The daylight meeting happened in a busy cafe near Midtown. Jasmine sat with Keisha at a two-top under a hanging plant that shed a leaf every now and then like punctuation. The clinic man arrived wearing a navy blazer and the expression of someone who says "I'm sorry" for a living. He placed a folder on the table and didn't touch it. "I can't give you copies," he said, "but I can explain processes." "We don't need a PowerPoint," Keisha said. "We need an answer." Jasmine nodded. "Did someone request a retest? Did someone request a different chain of custody? Did someone pay for a fast track that wasn't protocol?" He folded his hands. "We had an employee who accepted instructions from a non-legal party. Those instructions affected the timing and labeling of samples. I can't speak to the accuracy of any specific test." Jasmine's chest tightened. "Labeling," she repeated. "You mean the names on the tubes?" "I mean the path each sample took," he said carefully. "Are you saying the result could be wrong?" Keisha asked, voice rising. "I'm saying the process was compromised," he replied. "What was the instruction?" Jasmine demanded. He looked her in the eye for the first time. "To ensure the outcome supported family peace." The phrase was used twice. Jasmine laughed, a small sound packed with disbelief. "Family peace," she said, as if the words were sour. "And what about my peace?" When they left, ATL sun felt rude, too bright for a day carrying that much shadow. Back in the car, Jasmine opened the voice memos app and stared at the new file. She had recorded the meeting. "You gonna post it?" Keisha asked. Jasmine didn't answer. The last time she posted something explosive, she had watched her life divide into before and after. She wasn't sure she had the stamina for another rupture, but she also knew silence had never saved her. It had only saved the men around her. Rasheeda arrived home to a front porch full of cameras. She didn't stop. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and old candles. Kirk was in the kitchen with 2 mugs he hadn't touched. "We need to talk," they said, at the same time. Then stood in the silence, like 2 strangers who had shown up to buy the same lamp off a listing. She moved first. "Just tell me if you made that call." He nodded, small and quick. "It was me." She inhaled, eyes wet but steady. "Did you pay someone to change the result?" He grimaced. I didn't hand anyone cash to swap a paper. I asked for a review. I pushed. I made clear what I needed." Her laugh was hollow. "What you needed," she said. "And what did I need?" He stepped toward her. "I was drowning. I thought if I could just get us to a calmer shore, we'd figure the rest out." "By building a boat out of lies?" she asked. "You told me to forgive you based on a reality you might have manufactured." He swallowed. "I told you to forgive me because I love you." She shook her head. "You told me to forgive you because you're used to being forgiven." The kids came down the stairs. Small feet, big ears. The oldest paused on the landing, sensing the temperature. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Go back up," Rasheeda said gently. "We're talking." When they were gone, she turned back to Kirk. "The family was left divided today because you chose to hold the truth like a hostage. I'm not going to let you ransom our peace anymore." He nodded, eyes shining. "Tell me what to do," he said. "Stand still," she answered. "Stop running. Stop begging other people to carry the parts of you that you're scared of." He nodded again, the way a man nods when he has run out of arguments. A message buzzed on Jasmine's phone. It was a link from a blocked account, leading to a private drive folder labeled Process Irregularities. Inside were scanned memos, staff notes about alternate routing, a supervisor's warning about external pressure, an initialed sticky with the word switch. Circled twice. She scrolled, breath quickening. The proof was messy, but it existed. Her finger hovered over the share icon. Keisha watched her closely. "You can set the city on fire," she said. Jasmine looked up, eyes tired but bright. "Or I can light it up just enough for people to see." That evening Yandy came anyway. Because that is what friends do when logic says don't. She found Rasheeda on the back steps. Staring at the purple edge of the sky, Yandy sat without talking first. Eventually, she said, "You don't owe anybody your composure." Rasheeda let out a breath. "I'm not trying to be composed," she said. "I'm trying to be whole." "Wholeness is messy," Yandy replied. "Don't let the show make you think it's supposed to look neat." They sat a while. A firefly lit, a tiny blinking Morse code for resilience. "You gonna film?" Yandy asked. "Probably," Rasheeda said. "My voice deserves to be in the record. Not just his." "Say the quiet thing out loud." Then, Yandy said, "Whatever it is." Rasheeda nodded, feeling the shape of the quiet thing forming a mouth. K. Michelle, somewhere across town, recorded a snippet of a new song with a hook that sounded suspiciously like it was born out of tonight. Carly posted a selfie captioned, "Never seen Atlanta this loud." The blogs reported, Jasmine had met with an official. Fans were shocked all over again. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided. Now not just by opinions but by plans. Some wanted a joint statement to save the brand. Others wanted scorched earth. And a few asked a radical question. What if they all just stopped talking and healed? But silence in this city was a rare plant. It didn't grow without a fence around it. Near midnight, Jasmine made her choice. She opened the drive link and selected 3 pages. The memo about external pressure, the sticky with switch, and the supervisor warning. She overlaid a watermark. For transparency, she didn't tag anyone. Didn't write a caption longer than 8 words. When family peace costs someone else theirs. She hit post and turned off the phone. Somewhere, 1,000 alarms went off. Somewhere else, a producer smiled a sad, satisfied smile. In the Frost house, a notification lit across 2 screens at once. Kirk closed his eyes. Rasheeda didn't. The city inhaled again, holding its breath like it was waiting for a verdict. But this wasn't a courtroom. It was a pulsing, flawed, breathing ecosystem of love and pride, and audience and money and memory. Truth had entered the chat. Not as a clean sentence, but as a pile of papers with coffee stains and initials nobody could quite trace. And still, beneath the noise, a quieter narrative hummed. What happens to a family when the story they've told themselves collapses under the weight of the story being told about them? The answer was coming, one scene at a time, stitched by people who were equal parts broken and brave. And somewhere inside that stitchwork, a new question sharpened. If the DNA wasn't the only thing that was switched, what else had been traded in the name of peace? The next morning, Atlanta buzzed like a city sitting on top of a live wire. The leaked pages had spread everywhere overnight, shared on blogs, Twitter threads, and even national morning talk shows. Reporters were calling it the Frost File. Memes had already started. Kirk's face photoshopped over a DNA report. Rasheeda's eyes replaced with flames. Jasmine captioned truth teller or troublemaker. Kirk's phone vibrated every 30 seconds with messages from friends, haters, and sponsors pulling contracts. He wanted to turn it off, to hide, but silence had become its own confession. He sat at Frost Bistro before opening hours, the smell of coffee and disinfectant in the air, scrolling through the chaos. Every post felt like a punch. When the front door opened, he didn't look up, expecting an employee. Instead, Jasmine walked in wearing a hoodie and dark glasses. The whole room went still, though only 2 waiters were inside. Kirk's first word came out cracked. "What are you doing here?" She slid into the booth across from him. "You said you wanted to talk. Here I am." His fingers tightened around his phone. "You picked the worst time." She shrugged. "No, I picked the real time. You've been playing pretend long enough." He leaned closer, voice low. "You don't understand what this did." "Oh, I understand." She cut him off. "You mean what it did to you? You still think this is about your pain? I lost everything because of you friends. Respect, peace, and for what? So you could sleep next to her pretending nothing happened." Kirk's eyes glistened. "You think I slept? I've been haunted every night by this." She laughed, bitter and short. "You call that guilt? I call that karma." The door jingled again. Rasheeda stepped inside. She froze when she saw them together. The look on her face shock, fury, heartbreakful, mixed into one still expression. Kirk stood instantly. Baby, listen, don't, she said sharply, holding up her hand. You meeting her here now? After everything? Jasmine started to stand too, but Rasheeda's glare cut through her. Sit down, both of you. Kirk obeyed. Rasheeda sat across from them like a judge about to deliver a sentence. I read everything. I heard everything. I even called the clinic myself. They confirmed there were irregularities. So I need the truth. No rehearsed lines. No excuses. What was switched? Kirk's voice was a whisper. The sample. Rasheeda's breath caught. What? The first test, he said, trembling. They told me it was inconclusive. I panicked. I asked for a retest. But the guy, he said if we changed the label it could avoid confusion. I thought it meant they'd test it faster. I didn't know they'd. His voice broke. They changed it. Jasmine slammed her hand on the table. You knew they changed it, Kirk. You begged for that change. Tears spilled from Rasheeda's eyes. So the result was fake. Silence stretched like wire between them. So all those nights you told me to forgive you, you built that forgiveness on a lie. A cameraman across the street lifted his lens. Flash. The sound cracked through the air like thunder. Paparazzi had found them. Kirk turned his face away, but it was too late. The shot went viral before they even left the building, captioned Frost Showdown. By evening, Love and Hip Hop producers had issued a statement saying they were monitoring developments. TMZ aired a teaser showing blurred footage of the meeting, claiming explosive confrontation caught on camera. Social media threads split like fault lines. Some fans called Jasmine brave, others called her messy. Some pitied Rasheeda, others accused her of denial. The family's reality had become everyone's entertainment again. Meanwhile, Mendices and Yandi were on live, talking about how hard marriage can be when cameras don't stop rolling. K. Michelle commented a fire emoji. Erica joined with same circus, different clowns. Atlanta lived for this drama, it was their mythology, their mirror. Late that night, Kirk sat on the back porch, rain coming down light and steady. Rasheeda stood in the doorway, wrapped in a robe, arms crossed. You ready to tell the whole story on camera tomorrow? She asked quietly. Kirk nodded. If that's what you need. It's not about what I need, she said. It's about what people deserve to hear from the man who lied to them for views. I didn't lie for views, he said. But the words felt weak even to him. Then say why. She pressed. Say it so the world stops guessing. He met her eyes. Because I was scared you'd leave. You should have been scared I'd stay and hate you, she replied, and turned away. Jasmine scrolled through her phone at home, seeing hundreds of messages, some hateful, some supportive. One caught her eye, a DM from an unknown account with a video attachment titled Final Truth. It was security footage from the clinic, time-stamped years ago. It showed Kirk pacing in the lobby, talking to a man in a lab coat. No sound, just gestures. Kirk slipping an envelope into the man's hand. Jasmine stared at the screen, heart pounding. This wasn't over. It was about to get worse. The next morning, Atlanta woke up to chaos again. Every gossip site shared the new clip. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag DNA switch. Hashtag Frost Files. Hashtag Truth leaked. Fans were stunned all over again. He bribed the clinic. One post read, Rasheeda deserves the world. Another said, Kirk's manager called every hour, begging him not to go live. You'll make it worse, he warned. Let it cool down. Kirk ignored him. At noon, he opened Instagram, hit live, and stared into the camera for 10 seconds before speaking. I messed up, he began. I made choices I can't undo. I thought I was protecting my family, but I was protecting my ego. I'm sorry. Thousands joined within minutes. Comments flooded the screen. Finally, he admits it. Too late. We still love you, Kirk. His voice cracked again. There's no excuse for changing that test. I wanted peace so bad I tried to build it on a lie. But the truth don't die. Rasheeda was watching from another room, tears sliding silently down her face. Jasmine watched too, biting her lip. Both women cried for different reasons, the one for betrayal, the other for release. The city listened, not realizing it was witnessing the quietest war ever fought on camera. A man against his own reflection, a woman reclaiming her voice, and another refusing to be erased again. And somewhere deep in Atlanta's heartbeat, a new rumor began about another test. Another name, another secret Kirk had buried long before this one ever came out. But that story was only beginning to surface. The sun dipped low over Atlanta, painting the skyline gold as the Frost family's name kept echoing through every corner of social media. Kirk Frost DNA scandal sat at the top of every trending list. The leaked footage from the clinic had gone global, reaching outlets far beyond the show's reach. Kirk's confession livestream had reached 1 million views in less than 2 hours. Under the flood of comments, some were forgiving, most were furious, but all were watching. The story had stopped belonging to them. It belonged to the audience now. Rasheeda sat in her dressing room, cameras waiting outside. Producers wanted her statement for the next episode's filming, but she hadn't decided if she would give one. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, eyes tired but unbroken. The makeup artist stood quietly nearby, unsure whether to speak. Finally, Rasheeda said, "You ever feel like people want your pain more than your peace?" The artist hesitated, then whispered, "Every day." Rasheeda gave a faint smile. "Then you know exactly what this show is built on." She picked up her phone and saw another notification. Jasmine had posted a voice note. The clip was short. Jasmine's voice shook slightly as she spoke. "This ain't about revenge anymore. It's about truth. I didn't make Kirk do what he did. I just stopped protecting him from it." That one line hit harder than any recording so far. Within minutes, fans flooded her comments. "You did the right thing. You're just messy. Let them handle it privately." But nothing in their lives had been private for years. Meanwhile, Kirk's mother showed up at the Frost house unannounced. She pushed past the cameras, waving them away. "Turn them things off," she said sharply. Inside, Kirk was sitting on the couch, head low. She placed her purse on the table and stood over him. "Boy, I told you when you started chasing that fame, it'd cost you your peace. You can rebuild a business. You can rebuild a house. But when you crack the trust of the woman who stood beside you through hell, you don't get that back with no apology video." Kirk wiped his face, voice trembling. "I know, Ma. I lost her." She looked toward the stairs, where Rasheeda stood quietly, watching. "You ain't lost her yet," his mother said. "But you will if you keep waiting for her to fix what you broke." Later that evening, the show's cameras rolled again, this time with all three of them in the same room. Kirk sat on one end of the couch, Rasheeda in the middle, Jasmine on the far side. The silence before filming began felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. The producer's voice broke through. "Just speak from the heart. No scripts." The red light blinked on. Rasheeda spoke first. "For years, people watched our marriage fall apart, then watched us try to rebuild. What they didn't see was the parts we kept off camera. The quiet pain, the fear, the doubt. Now all of it's out there, and maybe that's what it takes for the truth to finally breathe." She turned slightly toward Kirk. "You say you did this to protect me, but real protection doesn't come from lies. It comes from honesty, even when it hurts." Kirk nodded, eyes glassy. "You right. I just didn't want to lose you. Then you should have trusted me enough to let me decide what I could handle," she replied softly. Jasmine exhaled, voice low. "I didn't leak it for fame. I leaked it because I couldn't carry it anymore. I watched y'all rebuild on something false, and I felt like the ghost nobody wanted to name." Kirk's voice cracked. "You were never a ghost. Then why did you treat me like one?" She shot back. He didn't answer. The silence spoke for him. When the cameras cut, no one moved. Rasheeda stood and walked out first. Kirk buried his face in his hands. Jasmine stared at the floor, whispering to herself. "Truth don't fix everything. It just removes the lie." Outside, fans gathered near the set, holding phones and chanting Team Rasheeda. The crowd stretched down the block. Security held them back as flashlights flickered. Inside, the producers huddled, already planning edits and teasers. One of them whispered, "This might be the biggest episode we've ever had." As night deepened, Jasmine drove out of the city, windows down, music off. Her phone buzzed again. It was an unknown number with a voice message. She played it through her car speakers. Kirk's voice, recorded earlier, said, "If anything happens to me, tell her I tried." She pulled over on the side of the road, heart pounding. "Tried what?" she muttered. She hit redial, but the number was disconnected. At the Frost house, Rasheeda packed a small overnight bag. Kirk watched her quietly. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere with quiet," she said. "I need to hear myself think without your voice over it." He stepped closer. "I love you." She turned at the door, eyes calm but final. "Love don't fix DNA, Kirk." She left without another word. Minutes later, his phone buzzed again, a news alert. Clinic whistleblower reveals second paternity discrepancy linked to Frost family. Kirk's breath caught. "Second," he whispered. He opened the article, eyes widening. The report said another child's file dated months before Jasmine's case had similar irregularities. Kirk felt his pulse spike. "No," he said aloud. "That's impossible." But the evidence was already circulating. Across town, Jasmine's car idled near a diner. She scrolled and saw the same headline. Second discrepancy. Her lips parted in shock. She whispered, "Who else?" And deep down, A chill ran through her because she suddenly remembered something, an old message. Years ago, from another woman who claimed Kirk had ghosted her after a paternity test didn't match. She had dismissed it back then. Now, it didn't seem so far. The night ended with Atlanta in uproar again. The Frost name tangled in yet another wave of speculation. Fans were shocked. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided all over again. And through the noise, one thing became clear. The DNA switch wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, and the truth behind it was still buried somewhere deep, waiting to rise with the next sunrise. The next morning the Frost house was eerily still, the kind of silence that makes walls feel alive. Kirk hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt still crumpled from the day before. The headline about the second discrepancy wouldn't leave his mind. His phone lay face down on the counter, vibrating every few minutes. Calls from lawyers, producers, even old friends he hadn't spoken to in years. Outside, reporters had gathered like vultures. A drone buzzed overhead, snapping aerial shots of the property. The privacy that used to protect him was gone, peeled away piece by his own doing. Rasheeda was staying in a hotel downtown, the kind with tall curtains and a river view. She sat on the bed scrolling through endless notifications, feeling both numb and electrified. Every post about the second child chipped at her composure. She texted Yandy, "If another woman shows up, I'm done. For real this time." Yandy replied, "You said that before. This time mean it." Rasheeda threw the phone aside and stared out the window. "I mean it," she whispered to herself, almost convincing. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat in a coffee shop with Keisha, both wearing sunglasses and hats. "You think it's real?" Keisha asked, scrolling through the same article. Jasmine nodded slowly. "The clinic said another file. I remember when I was there, the clerk mentioned something about another Frost case earlier that month. I thought she meant mine got logged twice. Maybe it wasn't." Keisha's jaw dropped. "So there's another woman." Jasmine sipped her drink, voice low. "There might be another child." Social media was already exploding with theories. Fans pulled up old episodes, frame by frame, hunting for clues. A clip resurfaced of Kirk walking out of a doctor's office in season 7, saying, "Ain't nothing else coming back to haunt me." It had 1 million views overnight. Reddit threads had titles like Frost Family Conspiracy Timeline. One user wrote, "This man been playing DNA roulette for a decade." Another posted, "The Frost brand is cooked. The only thing left is the truth." By noon, Kirk's manager stormed into his studio. "We need to control this. If there's another test, we can't let it blindside us." Kirk glared. "You think I don't know that? I don't even know if it's real." "Then find out," the manager said, dropping a file on his desk. "That's the name." The clinic sent it anonymously. Kirk hesitated, then flipped it open. Inside was a blurred copy of a medical report. He froze at the name Tanisha Reed. His memory jolted back years ago, before the Jasmine scandal. A brief encounter during an event in Miami. She'd vanished after a few months of texting. He'd heard nothing since. His chest tightened. "This can't be happening," he muttered. Rasheeda's phone buzzed again. It was Mona Scott, the show's producer. Baby girl Mona's voice came through calm but sharp. "We need you at the studio. I'm doing an emergency sit-down with all 3 of y'all." "Not happening," Rasheeda said flatly. "Oh, it's happening," Mona replied. "Because if you don't speak, someone else will write your story for you." Rasheeda hung up, but deep down, she knew Mona was right. Silence had never been her shield, it was always someone else's weapon. Hours later, at the studio, the tension was thick enough to taste. Kirk sat under the lights, his legs shaking. Jasmine arrived next, sunglasses on, lips pressed tight. Finally, Rasheeda walked in, poised, guarded. The cameras rolled. Mona's voice guided the room. "We're here because Atlanta is watching. The truth is out. Or maybe it's still hiding. Kirk, let's start with you. Who is Tanisha Reed?" Kirk's throat went dry. "Someone I knew. Years ago, before the Jasmine situation." Mona raised an eyebrow. "Did you have a child with her?" He exhaled slowly. "I don't know." Gasps rippled through the crew. Rasheeda's eyes widened. "You don't know?" Kirk's voice cracked. "I thought I did. I thought it wasn't mine." Jasmine leaned forward. "So you changed her test to..." The room froze. Kirk's silence answered for him. The camera zoomed in on Rasheeda's face, stares forming, jaw clenched. She whispered, "How many more women gotta lose sleep for your piece?" Kirk tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled back. "Don't touch me," she said. Mona broke the silence. "Tanisha's agreed to talk to us. She's outside." Gasps filled the studio again. Kirk's head dropped into his hands. "No," he muttered, but the door opened, and Tanisha walked in, a tall woman with long curls, holding a folder. She looked nervous but determined. I didn't want to come here, she began. But I saw the news, and I realized the truth's already half out. The rest might as well follow. She handed the folder to Mona. These are copies of the test results. One from the clinic, one from a private lab I paid for recently. Mona scanned them quickly, eyes widening. They don't match. Kirk's head shot up. What you mean they don't match? Tanisha said, the first test said you weren't the father. The new one says you are. A collective gasp filled the room. Cameras zoomed in again. Rasheeda covered her mouth. Kirk sat frozen, color draining from his face. That's impossible, he whispered. It's not impossible, Tanisha said softly. It's the truth, and I have proof. The scene devolved into chaos. Producers scrambled. Assistants whispered. Cameras rolled as Kirk stood and walked out, muttering, I can't do this. Rasheeda stared after him, voice trembling. You already did. Jasmine shook her head, half in pity, half in disgust. Same story, different year. Outside, Kirk's car peeled out of the parking lot. Paparazzi chased him down the street, shouting questions. Is Tanisha's child yours? Did you pay off the clinic? Are you getting divorced? His only answer was silence. By nightfall, the footage leaked again. Atlanta watched it like a live soap opera, hearts pounding, comment sections exploding. Fans were shocked, emotions ran high, and the Frost family, once known for rebuilding, was now breaking in real time. Inside her hotel room, Rasheeda replayed the episode before it even aired, sent by an insider. When the clip ended, she looked straight into the camera of her own phone and hit record. I'm tired of being the woman who gets lied to on repeat, she said, her voice steady but cold. This time, I'm not saving nobody's name but my own. She hit upload. Within minutes, it had 1 million views. The city of Atlanta didn't sleep that night, and neither did Kirk Frost, whose phone kept lighting up with 3 names he couldn't escape: Rasheeda, Jasmine, and Tanisha, all calling for the same thing he'd run from his entire life: the truth. Kirk sat alone in his car again, engine off, headlights dim against the rain. The windshield wipers brushed rhythmically, but his mind refused to quiet. 3 names haunted every breath: Rasheeda, Jasmine. Each one carried a truth he'd tried to bury under charm, under excuses, under the illusion of control. The city outside his window felt like it was whispering his sins back to him. Every billboard, every passing car seemed to remind him of the empire he built on half-truths and shaky peace. His phone buzzed again. It was a text from Rasheeda. You owe me more than a confession. You owe me the truth in full. He didn't reply. He couldn't. She deserved the truth, but he no longer knew how to tell it without destroying what little was left of them. At the hotel, Rasheeda was packing up her things. The TV played softly in the background, and entertainment show, looping the footage from the studio. Kirk's face frozen in shame, Tanisha's calm voice steadying the storm. She turned off the TV and sat on the bed. Beside her, her laptop pinged with a new email. It was from an anonymous sender. Subject line: the real file. Her pulse quickened as she clicked it open. Attached was a PDF scanned lab records from the same clinic, dated months before Jasmine's case. The initials KF and TR appeared on separate lines, but there was a third name, JW, handwritten, in the corner, circled in red ink. Rasheeda's stomach dropped. Jasmine Washington, she whispered. The file connected the 2 cases. The same lab technician had handled both tests. Across town, Jasmine sat with Keisha scrolling through the same news, exhausted but restless. They won't stop calling me, Jasmine said, rubbing her temples. Everybody wants an interview, a statement, a reaction. I don't even know what else to say. Keisha frowned. Say you're free. Say you ain't letting no man's mess define you again. Jasmine laughed dryly. Freedom, don't feel free when it comes with death threats and gossip blogs. Her phone vibrated a known number. She let it ring out, then played the voicemail. It was a man's voice, low and urgent. Miss Washington, this is from the clinic. We need to discuss the file that leaked. It wasn't complete. There's more you should see. She and Keisha exchanged a glance. You think it's real? Keisha asked. Jasmine nodded slowly. Something about the way he said it sounded scared. By afternoon, the internet was boiling. Tanisha had gone live, addressing the rumors directly. She stood outside a courthouse, papers in her hand. I don't want money, she said. I want accountability. Kirk Frost altered my life. My child's been asking who her father is since she could talk. Now we both know. Comments flew across the screen like sparks. She's brave. He's finished. Rasheeda, run. Kirk saw the live feed from his phone in the studio and slammed it down. Turn it off. He shouted at his manager. Turn all of it off. His manager raised his hands. Bro, you can't turn off the internet. Kirk glared at him, voice low. Watch me. He stormed out, ignoring the cameras trailing him. Meanwhile, Rasheeda drove straight to Jasmine's apartment. When Jasmine opened the door, both women froze. Years of anger, jealousy, and betrayal stood between them. But this time there was no screaming, no tension, just exhaustion. Rasheeda held up her phone, showing the file. You seen this? Jasmine squinted. No, what is it? It's proof that both your test and Tanisha's were handled by the same man, Rasheeda said. And he's the one who did the switch. Jasmine blinked, stunned. So Kirk didn't do it himself. Rasheeda hesitated. He asked for help, but this man made sure it looked clean. They sat down at the table, silence stretching between them. Jasmine finally said, You think that changes anything? Rasheeda looked at her, voice steady. No, but it means this ain't just his mess, it's a system that let him buy a lie. As if on cue, both their phones buzzed with breaking news. Former clinic employee speaks out, claims DNA tests for Kirk Frost were intentionally altered for cash. The accompanying video showed a young man, face blurred, voice disguised. He offered money for a result that wouldn't break his home. I changed the labels. I shouldn't have, but I was desperate. The city exploded again. Radio stations debated whether Kirk should be charged. Fans were shocked. Emotions ran high. And the family was left divided, not just in feeling but in fact. Now it wasn't gossip, it was evidence. Kirk watched the broadcast from his car, knuckles white on the steering wheel. He whispered to himself, I never told him to change it. I just hinted. But hints had consequences. Later that night, Rasheeda returned home. Kirk was there, waiting on the porch, drenched from rain, eyes hollow. I heard, she said quietly. You heard. He repeated. So what now? She crossed her arms. Now you face it. With you? He asked. She looked at him, pain flickering behind her calm. With the truth. Not me. She turned to go inside, leaving him standing in the rain. Inside, the house felt emptier than it ever had. Family photos lined the hallway, smiling faces from better years. She stopped at one, her and Kirk holding hands. Jasmine blurred in the background of that old reunion photo. Irony felt like a ghost breathing down her neck. Meanwhile, Jasmine met with a reporter downtown, ready to tell everything once and for all. No filters, no edits, she said. People need to understand what happens when men with power rewrite reality. The reporter nodded. You ready for the backlash? Been living in it for years, she replied. As midnight neared, another leak surfaced, emails between Kirk's management team and the clinic's legal office, arranging confidential settlements. The receipts were undeniable. Kirk Frost's entire empire began to crumble. Brand deals canceled overnight. Frost Bistro's social pages flooded with negative reviews. Sponsors pulled ads. Atlanta was watching the downfall live. And yet, amid the chaos, Rasheeda posted one final message on her Instagram story. A black screen with white text. The truth don't ruin people, lies do. It was reposted by thousands, including Jasmine, Tanisha, and even K. Michelle, who added, Say that louder. For the first time in years, the women who had once been pitted against each other by one man's choices were united by the same truth. And Kirk, sitting alone in his dark studio, finally understood the cost of silence. The lights flickered above him, his reflection staring back from the black window pane. He whispered the same words over and over like a prayer he'd never learned how to mean. I'm sorry. But Atlanta wasn't listening anymore. The story had moved past him. It belonged to the women now. And they weren't done speaking. The next morning came quiet but heavy, like Atlanta itself was holding its breath. The sky was a dull gray, clouds thick enough to drown the sun. Kirk hadn't left the studio all night. His phone battery was dead, his voice hoarse from talking to no one. The floor around him was littered with crumpled notes, half apologies, half explanations that no longer mattered. Every time he tried to write something worth saying, it came out empty. He knew there was no version of truth that could fix what was already broken. Outside, reporters still camped near the Frost house. Headlines were now calling it the biggest reality scandal since Stevie and Joe's line. Memes flooded every feed. Kirk's face on a DNA report. Rasheeda with angel wings. Jasmine holding a microphone under the caption, she warned y'all. Atlanta had turned the pain into performance again. And yet, behind the screens, real lives were unraveling. Rasheeda sat across from her lawyer, pen in hand. Divorce papers. The decision wasn't impulsive, was survival. The lawyer explained the assets, the steps, the waiting period. Rasheeda barely heard her. Her mind kept replaying the sound of Kirk's voice saying, I just wanted peace. She signed her name slowly, the ink gliding over the paper like the end of a long sentence. Mona Scott called that afternoon, voice brisk but oddly respectful. "I won't push you to film," she said, "but if you want the last word, I'll make sure it's your way." Rasheeda's answer was calm. "I'll speak when the cameras aren't rolling." Mona paused. "That's when it'll mean the most." Meanwhile, Jasmine met Tanisha in person for the first time. They sat in a quiet lounge, two women who should have hated each other but didn't. Jasmine broke the silence first. "Funny how we both thought we were the only ones." Tanisha nodded. "That's how he kept it neat." Jasmine smiled sadly. "Neat's over." Tanisha slid her phone across the table. "The lawyer said the investigation's opening. That clinic's getting sued." Jasmine scrolled through the messages, relief flickering in her eyes. "So somebody, finally paying for it." "Not just somebody," Tanisha said. "Everybody who knew." Back at the Frost house, Kirk walked through the rooms like a stranger visiting his own memories. Every photo on the wall was a lie he had once convinced himself was truth. He found Rasheeda's necklace hanging on the mirror, the one she always wore on camera. He held it in his hand for a long moment, then placed it on the counter like an offering. His phone, now recharged, lit up again, this time with a call from Mona. He hesitated, then answered. "We're doing a reunion special," she said. "No scripts, just truth." Kirk laughed weakly. "Truth? You sure Atlanta ready for that?" "It don't matter if they ready," she replied. "It's coming anyway." When the reunion taped 2 weeks later, the set was darker, simpler, no glitz, no gloss. The audience sat silent as Kirk walked in alone. Jasmine and Tanisha sat side by side, Rasheeda at the opposite end. Mona leaned forward, voice low. "We're not here to rehash. We're here to close the loop." "Kirk, what do you want to say?" He exhaled. "I spent years trying to keep a version of myself alive that never existed. I told myself lies were protection, but they were poison. I hurt people who loved me. I hurt people who trusted me. And I thought I could fix it if I just controlled the story." His voice wavered. "But you can't control truth. It's gonna find its way out, no matter how deep you bury it." Rasheeda looked at him, eyes calm but unreadable. "You say that now," she said softly. "But you never asked who paid the price while you were burying it." Kirk nodded. "I see it now." "Too late," Jasmine said quietly. "Truth late still better than lie forever," he replied. Tanisha spoke last. "We can't change what happened, but maybe we can stop pretending it's entertainment. This was our real life." Her words hit the audience hard. No one clapped. No one moved. It was the first time in years the show felt human again. After the taping, Kirk walked out without cameras following. The night air hit him cold. Sharp, honest. His phone buzzed a text from Rasheeda. "I meant what I said, but I hope you learn from it." He typed back, "I will," then deleted it before sending. The next morning, Jasmine posted a photo, her, Tanisha, and Rasheeda standing together after the reunion. No captions, no filters, just 3 women finally on the same side of truth. The internet didn't know what to do with it. Some called it powerful, some called it staged. But for once, none of them cared. Atlanta moved on, as it always did, but something had shifted. People were quieter about the gossip, slower to pick sides. Frost Bistro reopened under new management, renamed Truth Table. Jasmine started her own podcast about women reclaiming their narratives. Tanisha launched a nonprofit for single mothers navigating legal systems. And Rasheeda, she built her peace quietly, far from the noise, finally living without a camera in her face. As for Kirk, he disappeared from the spotlight entirely. Some said he moved to Miami. Others said he was producing music under a fake name. No one knew for sure, and maybe that was best. His last public words came in a single post. Months later, "Truth costs everything, but at least you stop renting peace." And just like that, the story ended where it began, with one message that changed everything. Only this time, it wasn't about hiding. It was about finally letting the truth speak louder than the lie. Months passed, and Atlanta finally began to breathe again. Though the Frost story lingered like a shadow no one could quite shake. The headlines had faded, but the echoes remained, snippets of dialogue, soundbites from interviews, the phrase DNA switch, now part of reality TV folklore. People still whispered about it in salons, barbershops, and radio shows. "You seen how Kirk disappeared? You think Rasheeda ever forgave him?" Jasmine still talking about that podcast. Rasheeda's life had shifted into a slower rhythm. No cameras, no forced smiles. She'd bought a small property on the edge of town, surrounded by quiet and trees. Mornings began with coffee instead of chaos. Some nights, she'd scroll through old photos, not with pain anymore, but with understanding. There was a time when she couldn't imagine life without Kirk. Now, she couldn't imagine it with another lie. She'd learned that peace wasn't about forgetting it, was about knowing and staying still anyway. The reunion had changed everyone. Jasmine's podcast, Under the Surface, had grown fast interviews with women who'd lived through public heartbreak, betrayal, and rebuilding. Her voice had become calm, steady, confident. One episode, titled Family Peace, opened with her saying, "Truth ain't supposed to destroy people. It's supposed to free them, even if the freedom comes with scars." Listeners flooded the comments with gratitude. For once, Jasmine wasn't the scandal. She was the voice that turned pain into purpose. Tanisha's nonprofit was thriving too. She named it Second Truth, helping women challenge corrupted family court cases and inaccurate paternity results. News outlets praised her transformation from scandal figure to advocate. When asked in an interview if she forgave Kirk, she said, "Forgiveness is optional. Accountability isn't." As for Kirk, he remained unseen, unheard, until one gray afternoon when a video quietly appeared on a new YouTube channel under his own name. No music, no edits, no logos, just him sitting by the ocean, wind in his beard, eyes soft with something like peace. He spoke slowly, without the defensive charm he once wore. "I used to think truth was something you could manage, like a brand or a storyline. But it's not. It's a living thing. You can't buy it, hide it, or silence it. I lost everything trying to protect what was already broken. And I earned every bit of that loss." He looked down for a moment, then added, "To the women I hurt, Rasheeda, Jasmine, Tanisha, you carried my lies longer than I carried my truth. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just saying thank you for surviving me." The video didn't go viral. No clickbait headlines, no debates. It spread quietly, shared by those who recognized a man trying, at last, to tell the truth without asking for applause. Comments under the video were gentle. "He looks tired but honest. Maybe this time he means it." Closure hits different when it's silent. Rasheeda saw it late one night. She watched the whole thing without blinking, her eyes wet but calm. When it ended, she didn't text him, didn't call. She whispered to herself, "That's enough." Then she closed her laptop and turned off the light. Weeks later, the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta reunion aired its final episode, a tribute montage to the saga that had consumed a decade of screens. It ended not with Kirk or Rasheeda, but with Jasmine's voice narrating, "The truth don't ruin love. It ruins lies that pretend to be love." The screen faded to black, the credits rolled, and for the first time, no one online argued. The silence was respect. In the months that followed, Atlanta's gossip cycle moved on to new names, new drama, new scandals. But the Frost story remained its cautionary tale, how fame without honesty can make a kingdom crumble. And how sometimes, when the cameras stop rolling, the quiet truth is all that's left. On a spring evening nearly a year later, Rasheeda stood outside her boutique as the sun dipped low, gold lights spilling over the windows. She looked up at the sign, her name shining above the door, and smiled faintly. A customer asked if she'd ever go back to reality TV. She laughed softly. "Baby, I lived enough of that off camera." Across town, Jasmine recorded the final episode of her podcast. Her closing words echoed the same truth that started everything. "If you ever find yourself tempted to hide behind a lie, remember this. Peace built on lies ain't peace. It's a countdown." And somewhere down in Miami, a man with a familiar voice closed his eyes by the water, hearing those words in the back of his mind. Feeling the tide take what was left of the noise, Kirk Frost, for once, didn't pick up his phone. He just let the ocean answer. The Frost saga was finally over, not with a scandal, not with a headline, but with a quiet kind of truth that no one could twist anymore. And in a city built on drama, that silence was the loudest thing Atlanta had ever heard. Summer drifted in over Atlanta, thick and warm, humming with new music and old gossip, but the Frost story had finally cooled into something like legend. People mentioned it in passing, like a cautionary proverb, whispered at brunch, or a side comment under reality clips. Remember what happened to Kirk? His name had become shorthand for what happens when love, fame, and fear collide. But beneath all that noise, life quietly rebuilt itself. Rasheeda's boutique had grown into more than a business. She'd turned it into a space for young women to learn about entrepreneurship, contracts, and self-protection. Twice a week, she hosted small mentoring circles, unannounced, with no cameras. She'd sit with women half her age and listen to their stories. Sometimes, she shared pieces of her own, stripped of the drama. Truth is cheaper than lies, she'd tell them, but most people too scared to afford it. Every time she said it, the room fell silent in understanding. She still got letters from fans, some thanking her for leaving, some begging her to reconcile, some just wanting to say they grew up watching her. She replied to none, but she read every single one. In their words, she found reminders of who she had been and how far she'd come. Jasmine's podcast had exploded beyond Atlanta. Under the Surface now streamed in dozens of countries, drawing guests from all over: the exes, the survivors, the ones who found themselves in stories that weren't theirs. People no longer introduced her as the girl from Kirk's scandal. They called her the woman who made honesty a genre. When she got invited to speak at a media panel, she hesitated. Public spaces still made her heart beat too fast. But she went, standing under bright lights, without shaking. Her speech was simple. I used to be the secret. Now I tell them. The crowd rose to their feet before she even finished. Tanisha's nonprofit expanded to 3 cities, and she became the face of reform campaigns around DNA testing accountability. She still kept her daughter out of the spotlight, still walked through grocery stores unnoticed, and she liked it that way. One evening, after a long day, she opened her messages and found one unread email. It was from Kirk. The subject read, "Thank you." The message was short. "You gave me the kind of truth that hurt, but it healed too. I hope your daughter grows up never needing to unlearn a man like me." She didn't reply, but she smiled anyway. It was enough. And Kirk, he stayed gone. The world didn't need him anymore. And for the first time, that didn't scare him. He spent his days in quiet corners of Florida, working in small studios under an alias, producing songs for new artists who didn't recognize his face. Sometimes, they'd thank him for the advice, not knowing they were thanking a man the internet had once buried. When the subject of Atlanta came up, he changed it. Some nights, he still dreamed of the Frost house, of laughter echoing through the kitchen, of Rasheeda's perfume in the hallway. But when he woke, he didn't reach for his phone. He let the dream fade, the way truth sometimes softens once it's done its work. On the anniversary of the reunion episode, Jasmine posted a short video, black screen, her voice narrating, "We built a world where lies sold faster than honesty, but even in that world, the truth survived us all." The post ended with 3 hearts, each a different color. Fans knew what it meant. They shared it everywhere. Within hours, #TruthSurvived trended again, not as gossip this time, but as gratitude. Rasheeda saw the tag while closing her boutique one night. She smiled, tapped the post, and left a quiet comment, always does. Jasmine liked it with no caption. Tanisha reposted it with one word, healed. And just like that, what had started as one man's fear of truth became a chorus of women reclaiming it. Atlanta still buzzed with new drama, new stars, new scandals. But the Frost story stayed untouched, a scar that healed into legend. Proof that even the loudest lies eventually lose their echo. Somewhere on a beach far from cameras, Kirk watched the sunset alone. A little boy ran past him, laughing, chasing a kite. Kirk smiled faintly. In that sound, the laughter, the wind, the small miracle of a quiet moment, he found what all the fame and lies had stolen. Peace without pretending, he whispered to himself. Finally, and for the first time in his life, there was no story left to hide. Just the sound of the ocean, steady, forgiving, endless. And above it all, the truth, silent, steady, still standing. Years slipped by, and the Frost story melted into memory. Atlanta grew louder with new stars, new scandals, and new faces fighting for the same 15 minutes of fame that once defined Kirk, Rasheeda, Jasmine, and Tanisha. But those who had lived that storm still carried its lessons like quiet armor. Rasheeda's boutique became a chain, 5 stores spread across Georgia, each one carrying the same understated charm she had always loved. Her empire didn't scream for attention anymore. It breathed confidence. One afternoon, a young journalist asked her if she'd ever do television again. She smiled politely. "TV gave me a story," she said. "Truth gave me peace. I'm good with peace." She spent most of her days mentoring, her nights with close friends, no longer needing cameras to feel seen. Sometimes she'd catch reruns of old seasons playing in background noise somewhere, a clip of her younger self crying on camera, defending a love that had already crumbled. She didn't turn it off anymore. She just whispered, "Thank you for surviving me," to the woman she used to be. Jasmine's voice had become a kind of music in Atlanta, steady, unhurried, strong. Under the Surface had turned into a production company, run by women telling women's stories. A streaming platform picked it up for a docuseries called Truth Table, inspired by Rasheeda's rebranded restaurant. Jasmine invited Rasheeda and Tanisha to film an episode together. When they sat across from each other on camera again, it wasn't to fight, it was to finish the story. "We thought we were enemies," Jasmine said during filming, "but we were just different sides of the same silence." Rasheeda nodded. That's what the world never understood. They saw competition. What it really was survival. Tanisha smiled faintly. And now it's healing. The episode aired quietly one Friday night. No chaos, no scandal. Just three women speaking in calm voices about how they learned to live with what truth revealed. The comments section wasn't filled with drama. It was filled with thank yous. Kirk watched that episode from his small apartment overlooking a narrow beach in Clearwater. The years had softened him. His hair was gray now, his voice slower. The music industry had forgotten his name, and he was fine with that. He still worked in studios, sometimes small local projects, unsigned artists who brought raw lyrics and big dreams. He never told them who he used to be. When they thanked him for guidance, he smiled quietly and said, "Just tell your truth early, before it costs you more later." One night, after recording a young singer's debut track, Kirk walked outside and saw a billboard playing an ad for Truth Table. Jasmine's face faded into Rasheeda's, then Tanisha's, then the words, "The truth survives." He stood there watching, wind blowing off the ocean, a little stunned at how the same story that nearly destroyed him had become something healing. He went home and opened a drawer filled with old things, rings, receipts, a phone that hadn't been turned on in years. At the bottom was a folded photo, him and Rasheeda from before the fame, back when their world was just music and ambition. He placed the photo on the desk, took out a pen, and wrote her a letter. "Rasheeda, I finally understand what peace means. It's not silence. It's not pretending everything's fine. It's knowing what broke and not trying to fix it anymore. I used to think truth was punishment, but it's grace. It gave me a second chance at being human. Thank you for teaching me that, even when it hurt. I hope you're happy." "I think you are, Kirk." He never mailed it. He didn't need to. It was enough to say it, even if no one heard. Weeks later, Truth Table received a Daytime Award for storytelling. During the acceptance speech, Jasmine thanked Rasheeda for her strength and Tanisha for her advocacy. Then she paused and said, "And to anyone who ever told a lie trying to protect love, remember. Love can survive truth, but it can't survive fear." The crowd rose in applause. Somewhere miles away, Kirk smiled quietly at the screen. By winter, Atlanta's skyline shimmered brighter than ever. New stories filled the air. But the Frost saga had become folklore, a story parents mentioned when teaching their kids about honesty. A case study in entertainment schools about reputation and redemption. And on a calm Sunday morning, Rasheeda opened her boutique early, sunlight spilling through the glass. Jasmine arrived with coffee. Tanisha followed, holding a small stack of flyers for a new foundation they'd built together, the Frost Initiative for Truth and Women's Justice. It wasn't named to honor him, but to remind the world what came from his mistakes. As they taped the first flyer to the window, Jasmine said softly, "You think he'd be proud?" Rasheeda looked at the reflection in the glass. Three women where once there had been chaos and nodded. "Maybe not proud," she said, "but at peace." Outside, the city pulsed with new beginnings. Inside, laughter replaced the echo of old arguments. The Frost story had started with secrets and ended with something but honesty, reclaimed by the very people it was meant to silence. And somewhere far away, Kirk Frost watched the horizon fade into dusk, whispered a quiet prayer for every person he'd hurt, and smiled for the first time in years, because the truth had finally done what it was always meant to do: set everyone free. Years later, the Frost story existed like a ghost that Atlanta still whispered about but no longer chased. The names had faded from headlines, replaced by younger faces and newer scandals. But those who'd lived it carried its weight in small, steady ways. They'd learned to live quietly, and that was its own kind of fame. Rasheeda now owned a design studio downtown, small but alive with color and sound. Her staff adored her, half mentor, half big sister, never pretending to be perfect. She no longer gave interviews, but every few months, she'd write short essays that people would pass around online, pieces about healing, business, love, and self-worth. One of them began with, "Some truths don't destroy, they prune." It went viral quietly, the kind of virality that didn't burn out overnight. She still wore her wedding ring on certain days, not as a symbol of commitment, but as a reminder of endurance. One evening, sitting in her office surrounded by fabrics and sketches, she received a small package. No return address. Inside was a silver locket, the same one she'd lost years ago during a trip she and Kirk had taken before everything went wrong. Inside the locket, a folded note in Kirk's handwriting. "You said I never listened. I finally did." She held it for a long time before tucking it back into the envelope. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "Good." Jasmine had evolved beyond the podcast. She'd written a book, Under the Surface, How the Truth Found Me, a mix of memoir and essays about womanhood and perception. It spent weeks on bestseller lists. Interviews described her as graceful, sharp, and unshakably honest. She still lived in Atlanta but traveled often, lecturing at universities about media ethics and narrative control. Once, during a talk in New York, a student asked, "Do you regret any of it?" Jasmine smiled. "I regret the silence more than the noise." Tanisha continued to grow her nonprofit. It expanded nationally, partnering with clinics to create transparent testing systems, helping prevent the kind of manipulation that had changed her life. Every time she met a mother who said, "You saved me," she thought about the night she almost didn't speak out. She had learned that sometimes redemption wasn't about fixing the past, it was about stopping its repetition. And Kirk, his name was barely spoken now. He had become something of an enigma, spotted rarely, often mistaken for someone else. Rumors said he'd bought a small house on an island near Savannah. Others said he volunteered at a music camp for teens. Both were true. He taught kids how to build songs from feelings, how to tell stories that didn't need lies to sound good. When they asked why he never showed his face on social media, he'd just laugh softly. Some stories don't need reruns. One afternoon, Jasmine visited Savannah for a charity event and crossed paths with him by chance. She didn't recognize him at first, the gray beard, the calm eyes. He noticed her immediately. "Miss Washington," he said quietly. She turned, startled, then smiled with something like peace. "Kirk." They stood in silence for a while, two ghosts from a story that used to own them. "You look good," he said finally. "Peace looks better on you than guilt ever did," she replied. He nodded. "You were right." "About what?" "That truth ain't supposed to destroy," he said. "It's supposed to rebuild." They didn't hug. They didn't need to. Some forgiveness doesn't need words, it just breathes and passes by. When Jasmine told Rasheeda later, Rasheeda's response was simple. "I'm glad he's breathing easy." Then she changed the subject to a new design she was working on, something for the Frost Initiative's next event. Months later, the three women appeared together one final time at a gala, celebrating the foundation's 5th anniversary. The theme was rebuilding through truth. The hall was filled with music, laughter, and quiet pride. They each gave short speeches, nothing rehearsed. Rasheeda said, "Truth doesn't come to destroy, it comes to reset." Jasmine said, "Peace isn't quiet, it's just honest." Tanisha said, "Healing doesn't erase the story, it changes who gets to tell it." The audience stood in ovation, but the three women just smiled at each other. The kind of smile born from shared history, pain, and survival. After the gala, as the crowd emptied, Rasheeda walked outside and looked up at the skyline. It shimmered against the night, alive, indifferent, eternal. Jasmine joined her, followed by Tanisha. They stood together, the city lights reflecting in their eyes. "Think he watching?" Jasmine asked quietly. Rasheeda nodded. Maybe he finally at peace. And miles away, on that quiet island near Savannah, Kirk Frost sat by the water, a soft wind carrying the faint sound of music from a nearby dock. He closed his eyes, hearing laughter that didn't hurt anymore. The ocean stretched before him, vast and forgiving. He smiled, small, real, final, and for the first time, the Frost story didn't feel like tragedy or scandal. It felt like life, bruised, healed, honest. A story that began with a lie and ended with something better. Peace that didn't need to prove itself, and truth that didn't need to shout. Autumn came early that year, the kind that wrapped Atlanta in gold light and quiet winds. And for once, the city didn't hum with gossip, it just breathed. The Frost name had faded from memory for most, filed away in the long archive of reality TV chaos that once defined the decade. But for the few who'd lived it, the echoes never fully left, they just softened into lessons. Rasheeda was 50 now, though she moved through the world with the same calm grace she'd earned in the fire. Her boutique had become a legacy brand. She didn't design trends anymore, she curated stories. Each piece in her collection was tagged with a word like truth, mercy, or rebirth. People bought them as keepsakes, not fashion. In every store, one small framed quote hung near the register: "Peace isn't the end of drama, it's the choice not to live inside it." Customers never knew she'd written it herself. Her sons were grown. The younger one helped manage the boutiques. The older one handled the real estate side. They protected her fiercely, almost reverently. Sometimes they'd mention their father with quiet affection, sometimes frustration, but never hate. Rasheeda had raised them to understand that brokenness didn't make a man evil, it just made him human. One evening, she sat in her backyard with a cup of tea and a phone she rarely used anymore. The sunset glowed soft pink against the trees. She scrolled through old photos, her, Kirk, and the boys from years ago. The image didn't hurt like it used to. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you for what it taught me." Then she powered the phone off. Jasmine, meanwhile, had become a face people quoted instead of judged. Her latest book, Peace Louder Than Lies, was part memoir, part manifesto. She was touring less now, spending more time mentoring other women, starting media ventures. She and Rasheeda spoke often short texts, voice notes, reminders that they were both still standing. Their friendship had outgrown the story that made it improbable. Tanisha had expanded her nonprofit nationwide. Second Truth was now backed by major donors and had changed legislation in several states. She lived quietly, choosing purpose over attention. Her daughter, now a teenager, often traveled with her, shyly introducing herself at events. When people asked about Kirk, Tanisha always said, "He was part of the path that got me here." And that was all. And Kirk, no one had seen him publicly in over 5 years. Sometimes, people swore they'd spotted him in small towns, helping out at community centers or teaching kids music. Others said he'd retired completely to the coast. His name wasn't whispered in judgment anymore, just curiosity. The scandal had decayed into something like myth. Then one day, a letter arrived at Rasheeda's studio, handwritten. No return address. She opened it carefully, her breath catching at the sight of his handwriting. "Rasheeda, if you're reading this, it means I finally stopped running from the quiet. I'm not sick. I'm not broken. I'm just ill. For years, I thought my story ended when the world stopped saying my name. Turns out, that's when it really started. I found peace in small things, kids learning chords, waves hitting the same rock every morning, silence that doesn't judge. I think about you more kindly than you'll ever know. Tell the boys I did one thing right by giving them you. And if you ever drive down to Savannah, look for a white cottage by the shore. You won't need directions, the sea will point you there. K." Rasheeda folded the letter slowly. She didn't cry. She just looked out the window, the city alive in the distance, and whispered, "Rest easy." A few months later, Jasmine called her. "You hear the news?" she asked softly. "He's gone." The line stayed quiet. "Natural causes," Jasmine added. "They found him by the water. Looked peaceful." Rasheeda closed her eyes. The ache gentle, like a familiar old song. "He finally got what he was chasing," she said. That weekend, she drove to Savannah. No cameras, no press, just her. The cottage was there. Small, quiet, painted white, just like he'd said. She stood at the edge of the water, the breeze tugging at her scarf, and placed his letter in the sand. Behind her, the waves came and went, pulling the paper out to sea until it vanished completely. She watched it go, her heart steady. For the first time, there was no anger, no regret, only gratitude that the story had finally learned how to end. Back in Atlanta, Jasmine recorded a final podcast episode titled "Truth Doesn't End, It Rests." In it, she said, "We spend so much time trying to rewrite the past that we forget peace is just the past forgiven." She dedicated it quietly to Kirk Frost. Tanisha listened from her office, smiling faintly as she looked at a framed quote on her wall. Rasheeda's handwriting from years ago. "Peace isn't the end of drama. It's the choice not to live inside it." And as night fell over Atlanta, the city hummed softly with life, not gossip. No hashtags, no leaks, no noise. Just the sound of rain tapping rooftops, the kind Kirk always said, reminded him of rhythm. The Frost story had begun in chaos, burned through betrayal, and ended in peace so quiet it didn't need to be announced. No headlines, no finales, no credits. Just a soft, lasting truth. Sometimes, redemption isn't loud. It's just living well after the world stops watching. You've heard the story unfold piece by piece, the scandal, the lies, the heartbreak, the truth that refused to stay buried. You've watched Kirk Frost fall from grace, watched Rasheeda fight for her peace, watched Jasmine and Tanisha reclaim their power. It started with one leaked message, one desperate attempt to hide, and it ended with something far stronger than exposure, transformation. But now, it's your turn to speak. Because this story isn't just about the Frost family. It's about every person who's ever lived inside a lie too heavy to carry. It's about every woman who stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every man who thought silence could save him. Every fan who looked at the screen and saw a mirror instead of a show. Maybe you've been there, the secret, the betrayal, the apology that came too late. Maybe you know what it feels like to lose everything and rebuild yourself from the truth out. So before you scroll away, take a second. Breathe. Think about what the truth means to you. Is it freedom? Is it fear? Is it something you've been avoiding because you think it'll destroy everything you love? Kirk thought that too. And look how it ended. Not with fame, not with validation, but with peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need followers, posts, or headlines. Just stillness. Just honesty. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something deeper than the drama, this is your moment to join the conversation. Drop your thoughts below. Whose journey hit you hardest? Was it Rasheeda, learning that strength doesn't mean pretending? Was it Jasmine, who turned pain into a platform? Or was it Kirk, who learned the hard way that truth delayed is still truth delivered? Write your answer in the comments. Don't just type for reaction, speak from the place that still remembers what it felt like to be lied to, or to lie. And when you're done, share this video. Send it to one person who needs to hear that truth doesn't ruin, it reveals. Because maybe their peace is waiting on the other side of a confession they've been afraid to make. If you believe truth can heal, hit that like button. It sounds small, but every tap tells the algorithm that honesty still matters. If you've ever stayed silent just to keep someone else comfortable, hit subscribe, because this channel is where we stop choosing comfort over clarity, where we stop pretending lies are love. You've seen the pain, but you've also seen what comes after the rebuilding, the forgiveness, the growth that doesn't need applause. That's what we stand for here. Not gossip, not glamour, but the real story that lives beneath the headlines. And if you're still watching, that means you're part of it. You might be sitting somewhere right now, on your phone, in your room, in your car, wondering what happened to all the noise that used to fill your life. Wondering how to make sense of the truth that just won't stay quiet. Maybe this story is your sign to stop running, to pick up your phone and tell the truth to someone who deserves it, to look in the mirror and say, "I forgive me," because peace doesn't come from revenge. It doesn't come from clapping back. It comes from release, from letting go of the image you built to survive and learning to live as who you really are. Rasheeda found it when she stopped defending what broke her. Jasmine found it when she started speaking instead of hiding. Tanisha found it when she used her pain to protect others. And Kirk, he found it when he finally stopped performing. So ask yourself, what are you still performing? What lie do you tell yourself every morning just to make it through the day? What truth have you buried so deep that it started to feel like part of your identity? Maybe today is the day you dig it up. Not for the world. Not for likes. For you. And when you do, remember you're not alone. This community is filled with people who've been through it all. The secrets, the heartbreaks, the rebirths. Every comment here isn't just a reaction, it's connection. And maybe your story is the one that helps someone else finally speak. If you're ready to live honestly, to build a life that doesn't need a filter or a script, hit that bell so you don't miss what's next. Because the next chapter isn't about the Frost scandal, it's about you, your truth, your healing, your peace. This channel will keep bringing stories that peel back the layers, the ones you whisper about, the ones you hide behind, the ones that make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty, love, and redemption. We'll talk about what it means to tell the truth in a world that profits off lies. We'll talk about real forgiveness, the kind that doesn't mean forgetting, but finally moving forward. And if this story taught us anything, it's that the truth never dies. You can bury it under contracts, under gossip, under years of silence, but it breathes. It waits. It finds the light. Kirk's message to Jasmine was meant to keep everything hidden, but in the end, it exposed more than anyone could imagine. Not because he wanted it to, but because truth doesn't need permission to rise. So before this video ends, remember this: peace built on lies will always crumble, but pain built on truth will always bloom into something stronger. You saw it happen here. Every heartbreak became a foundation. Every scandal became a lesson. The Frost story might be over, but yours isn't. The only thing standing between you and peace is the lie you haven't let go of yet. So let go. Comment what truth you're ready to own. And when you're done, type one word: peace too. Let the world know you're choosing honesty over illusion. Like this video if it reminded you that truth matters. Share it if you believe someone out there needs that reminder too. And subscribe, not for the drama, but for the healing, the kind that starts when the cameras stop rolling. This isn't just another story. It's a mirror. And maybe the reflection staring back at you is the one ready to begin again. So take your moment. Breathe deep. Find your truth. Because at the end of every secret, every betrayal, every quiet night where you ask yourself what went wrong, there's still a chance to make it right. The Frost saga proved one thing: truth never loses. It just waits for you to stop running. And if you made it this far, you already took the first step. Now take the next one. Hit like. Hit subscribe. Drop peace in the comments. And remember, no matter how loud the lie gets, the truth always finds its voice. It found Kirk. It found Rasheeda. It found Jasmine and Tanisha. And tonight, maybe just maybe it found you too.